What I don't understand, though, is why a receipt charges.
Okay, I think we're live. Are we live?
We're live.
Somebody look and see if we're live.
I don't know if that says live streaming.
Okay, well, welcome to today. Today being what, Tuesday?
Every time.
Hope yesterday was awesome. Super smoking great. Hope tomorrow's even better. Today we're going to talk about today's stuff and how to win today. We have Mark Violette.
Hello.
He's not the handsome one, but he's pretty all right.
Took a shower, comb my hair.
Right. And so, but he's an attorney. Are you an attorney?
I am.
All right. So what's the difference between an attorney and a lawyer?
Nothing.
Okay. I thought you could be a lawyer as long as you pass the bar or you get out of law school. And when you pass the bar, you're an attorney?
Sure.
Is there no? Okay. If you're in a game show, just remember that.
They have two different definitions, but it's basically the same thing.
What's an esquire?
The old Latin term for attorney.
What's a snake, shark, or vulture?
What everybody calls attorneys.
All right. So here's the deal. I'm going to tell you something real quick that's on my mind. Then we're going to talk about this buyer broker compensation agreement. Okay. First things first, though. I would contend you can get anything you want in your life as much as you want for as long as you want, as long as you are willing to create a good habit and exercise that or execute that habit consistently. All right. Even if it's 1 year. Mark, if you're a tennis player, right?
I am.
If you go out and practice hard on the right things for a year consistently, you'll be better, right?
I would say as long as you have somebody coaching you how to do it correctly, then yes.
You work in some sort of system properly, right?
Correct.
If you want to get more fit, you create a fitness schedule and you consistently employ that over a year, your life, your physiology will change dramatically. Same thing with eating, same thing with everything. You apply that to your real estate business. It's just if you start doing the lead gen, the follow-up, the previewing and studying the market consistently, within 1 year, your business will be different. And then if you can do it for the rest of your career, if you can make a habit, things change. It's as easy or as hard as that. Do you agree with that?
I do. In fact, to go back to so probably 11 years ago, the wife goes to Michigan with our son. And I said, I'm going to work out every day for 30 straight days. Saw a huge difference there and been working out ever since. Mm-hmm. So once you form the habit, it's a lot easier.
Yep. And then you just be consistent. Just if you work out here and there and once in a while, it doesn't take.
Correct.
As a matter of fact,
you don't see results. Yeah. You don't see results and then you get frustrated.
You go backwards.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just something to think about in your business. If you want to win the day that way, just find it. And it works in reverse. If you get a bad habit and consistently do it, you're going backwards. So be careful. Okay. All right. So Mark, why are we here? What are we talking about?
So the Florida Association of Realtors finally released the updated, we're just going to call them buyer compensation agreements. It looks like they have two different formats. One is going to be entitled, here, if you want to pull up one of them.
All right. Let's try this.
Pull up the first one.
Slide one.
There we go. Oh, geez, that's small.
Can we read it?
Compensation agreement, seller to buyer's broker. So effectively, let's say there's a for sale by owner. And, the new rules require you, if you
Hold on. This is in the state of Florida only. Is that true?
Yes, that's going to be correct for us.
Okay.
Correct.
Other states will have probably similar, but this is for Florida specific.
And they did make it a simple form. So it's not very threatening. Buyers should not be too intimidated about it. So a lot of it's going to be how you present this document to a buyer. But in essence, like I said, there's two forms. This is going to be the seller to buyer's broker. So what the form is going to do is if you have a new buyer and they want to go see a property, as you know, starting August 17th, you must get a signed buyer's broker agreement before you can show the property. Otherwise, you get slapped on the wrist or something happens to you bad. I don't know what that is yet. But if it's a for sale by owner or the seller is not represented by a listing agent, you're going to pull this form out. And when you go through it, it's pretty self-explanatory as far as what you can fill in.
You only do this when you're bringing a contract. You're not doing it before. You're not at the showing. This is when you bring a contract.
Is this touchscreen? No, because I can't read it. But it is going to have under section number 3 in the terms, it is going to say it becomes effective under a duly executed contract. So there's...
What have I done? Oh, page 2. Do you want page 2?
Not yet. Go back to page 1. Yeah, there you go.
Amateur production.
Can you guys read that, or is it too small?
Mhm.
Okay, good. So like I said, I think for your purposes, this is not the buyer's agreement. You're going to have a separate agreement there, but this is the compensation you're going to give to the seller. So at the time you're forming the contract, you're still going to have to call, if there's a listing agent, let's say, you're still going to have to call a listing agent and say, how much you paying out? So let's go to the second form.
Second form?
Yeah, the second form. Because most of them are not going to be this one. You're not going to normally have a for sale by owner.
Okay, this is the other form.
It's a small percentage, but this is likely the one you're going to use. So it's going to be the seller's broker to buyer's broker. Because remember, it's not agent to agent, it's always broker to broker. And this is when you've got your buyer. They've already signed the buyer's agreement. You're going to probably show this to your buyer when they sign the buyer's agreement that says, hey, listen, when we submit.
I'm sorry, guys. Bear with me. Your bad production value here.
When we submit an offer, I'm going to present this.
Oh, God, what have I done?
Click on this thing right here. There you go. Now we're back.
This is good.
Sometimes there's simple things. If you did this every day for a year, you'd be better at it next year.
Yes. Can you imagine if I did?
All right. So this is going to be form number 2. So you're still going to have your buyer broker agreement that they sign. And then this one will be submitted to the listing agent at the time that you're going to submit the buyer's offer. That way you don't necessarily have to give the listing agent your buyer broker agreement. And if you go through it again, it's not binding.
But this is not on the contract itself proper. This is in addition to.
Correct. Oh, yeah. Just more forms for everybody to fill out. And this is where you're asking essentially even though it's to the listing broker or listing agent, you're really asking the seller to pay the buyer's agent's commission through this document. So like I said, this will be submitted with the offer.
And what we're doing here is making sure somebody can't say, I didn't know.
So if you rewind to before all this happened, in the event there was a dispute on how much a buyer broker's commission was, you would go right to the MLS. You would print out. So basically you get a property under contract. You immediately run to the MLS. You print out the MLS designation that says
say in the MLS?
Buyer's agent gets 2%, 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is. You put that in your file. This is going to supplement that.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you don't do this, and I'm guessing this is going to be required as some sort of the paper people are going to ask for this. JB Dickinson, Salt Lake, welcome. Hello. John Marlotti, New York.
Martellotti.
Sorry, John. New York has 2 forms also. Okay, good. Julie's and Gulf Breeze. So at any rate, I think this is your brokerage is going to ask for this anyway, right?
Well, I think it's going to depend on each brokerage, but in order to protect yourself, the answer is yes. Yeah. So whether or not, a lot of times what happens is a brokerage will set up compliance and they'll say, I will not give you your commission check until you've checked off all the boxes. And this could be another box you're going to have to check off depending on.
Do we need this anymore?
You, probably not unless people want to read it. You can go to page 2. But so click on page 2 right there. And what you'll notice is page 2 on both contracts, exactly the same. So all they're saying is if there's a dispute, it goes to arbitration. And I can't read the miscellaneous clause. It's too small. But they both say the same thing, no matter which form you're using on page 2. So I would recommend taking the whole 10 minutes it takes to read that, and then you're an expert. It's not
consistently
threatening.
Read it, and good things will happen for you. Yep. But here, I'm going to get rid of this. Eventually, this will be gone. Right? Or do I just remove it?
Probably click on
which one? No?
The 3. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Remove.
And then I got to go to this route. Please bear with me. The production quality. I don't take responsibility. Wait, we lost somebody. We lost Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
4 people. There you go.
What are we doing wrong here?
Uh-oh.
We lost Mark Simpson.
There I am.
All right. Oh my Lord.
I'm getting vertigo.
I was going to say, hopefully nobody's drinking this morning.
What am I doing wrong here? We added part to this.
There you go.
All right. So here's what I'm going to tell you. My experience with this all is new agents, my new agents on my team, no problem getting these buyer brokers, just is what they do, right? My experienced agents, my seasoned people, nightmare. They won't do it. They can't do it. They just
nobody likes change.
Not in their wheelhouse. So, but what I think is going to happen is they're going to lose a commission. Something's going to get. bad on them. Is that fair to say?
Well, they only have till August 17th anyways. So they can not like it for the next however many days that is. Then they have to do
But
it.
let's say you don't do it. Let's say you don't do it. I didn't get anybody to sign this. And what happens if the seller doesn't pay a commission? I got nothing.
The only thing you have, if they're not going to sign these two documents we're talking about today, then you have nothing to enforce against listing agent and nothing to force against the seller.
You got nothing.
If they allege no, or if they allege that the numbers are incorrect.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next thing that's going to happen from a closing standpoint, when I do a closing, is our process is we go directly to the listing agent and say, how much is the total commission? How much are you paying out? And since
this is a verbal, there's no show me the paper.
There's no possible way I can go verify unless somebody has something in writing. So I'm going to assume what the listing agent is telling me is correct. And guess when you find out if the numbers are not correct? That's right. Like a day before closing, when we send the settlement statement out, because that's when the lender finally balances with us. And you go, they verbally told me we would split it 50-50. And now it's showing, let's just say 60-40. And then we're all at a standstill going, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to go with the listing agent's amount, or
The listing agent says, I don't remember. I don't know. What do we got in writing?
which we've already had to happen once.
I think this is going to really fall on the listing agent to say, send us over the compensation agreement.
Mhm.
And so without the listing agreement saying we don't have all of our T's crossed and I's dotted, it will really fall to the listing.
You're right. I think it falls to the buyer.
Well, the buyer's
Listing
going to have
an
to
agreement with the
secure
seller,
it.
not the buyer.
Yeah, but the buyer's going to have to secure it with their client. But the seller, if I'm wanting to give a net sheet to my seller, I'm definitely going to need to have all of that information.
Well, that's coming from a listing agent who knows what they're doing.
Correct.
Now, we may have 5,000 agents in our e-car area, and I'm going to go with the majority of them. I mean, the things that we hear, for instance, we had a contract and my office called the buyer's agent to say, 3 days have passed. Is the buyer going to send the earnest money deposit to us? And the agent literally said, wait a minute, the buyer has to send you money?
Oh, wow.
So everybody's a little bit different. So we're not judging anybody. Sometimes, you get busy or whatever, but.
So I have a question. All right. It seems to me that, one, if we've got a FSBO, we would send over that first document to identify that the seller is willing to make a concession for the commission. Second is there's already a predetermined concession for commission that has been secured by the listing agent. That would be that second form. If the seller says, I'm not paying a commission, and we're including the offer, the commission in the offer, in other words, the seller's paying for it and tacking it on, neither of those would be required. It would just need to be in additional terms. Is that correct?
Well, yes, but run that through in reality terms. So there's a for sale by owner. A buyer calls you cold and says, I'm looking for a 4-3. And there's a for sale because you've combed the area. The buyer doesn't know this place exists. So you call up the seller and you say, I've got a potential purchaser for you. And the seller goes, you know what? You're the 15th person that have called me today on this whole thing. I'm not signing anything. Why don't you bring them over and then we'll discuss it? So I think the natural fear for a buyer's agent is I'm now introducing my buyer directly to the seller. And my agreement with the buyer says, hey, if the seller doesn't pay me, you now have to pay me. So it's going to be another item on your buyer's listing questions that says, do you want me to show you properties that currently are not offering a commission? Yes or no. Not a, well, we'll see, or maybe.
This is a proper trading situation.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you need to establish that, even though you don't see it coming, or most buyers agents are not going to see this coming. That needs to be established up front.
That needs to be very much up front.
It's a trading issue. Brokers need to train their agents properly.
Yep.
I've got a question. I saw this, I think, somewhere yesterday. Listing agents saying, I don't need a buyer broker agreement. Just come up and show your property. And buyers don't have to sign it. Are you on board with this?
Up until August 17th.
What happens on August 18th?
Well, then, according to NAR, if you're a member of NAR, which you're a member of eCar, then the rule says you must.
And if you don't, you could be turned in and all kinds of
disciplinary action.
Okay.
there we go.
Whatever that means. Yeah, that's what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think all of this is a good thing. Because it's going to force buyer agents to get commitment from a buyer they're quote unquote representing before they start representing. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think
Don't get too far into it.
I think the buyer agents who have role played the dialogue on conversations will be much better able to secure clients, not because they're attractive or anything like that, but because they're aware of the pitfalls.
Yeah.
They can educate the potential buyer. They're not just going, oh, well, NAR requires this, so you must sign it. I mean, if I hear that, I'm like, well, that doesn't really tell me why.
Yeah.
So I think the good buyer's agents will alleviate the stress to that buyer in signing the document because they've educated them, they've told them the reasons why, and now they're able to move on.
Okay. Taking it to the next level, then the well-trained, highly effective listing agents will do the same multiplied by 10. Because if you are able to demonstrate to the seller how they benefit by having brokers receive compensation, you're going to be that much more attractive.
Well, so the reason a seller gets a listing agent primarily, one is they have access to the MLS. So that's your internet of I want to sell properties.
Right.
I know there's Zillow and whatever, but there's you can log on and you can see all available homes that are listed. So the demand, you're sending your information out to the highest demand possible. And the next thing then comes the economy behind it. Most buyers don't have a bunch of cash.
Upfront money.
Correct.
But they can get it from the bank or someone.
Now, all a seller thinks at first, before they're educated by a listing agent, is, wait a minute, I want to maximize the dollars in my pocket. And what's important is the two items to highlight is, one, if you have a product, you want to be able to reach as many people as possible. That creates the demand and one supply, which is your one piece of property, because there's only that one piece of property in the world. You can't put that on the same place. That's why real estate
One parcel ID number.
That's why real estate is unique. So if you can explain to the seller that we're reaching the maximum amount of people, and then the next thing is going to be, we're going to eliminate potential purchasers if you're not willing to pay the buyer's agent, because now all of a sudden our demand will go down by, and then you just figure out how many buyer agents are going to work for free.
Well, and I think also educating the seller to say, look, when we bring on that, they might say, well, you can do that. Understand something. What you're giving up if I go to both sides of the table, and we want somebody representing the buyer through the buying process.
Right.
Because that's a whole nother, when that report comes back and they're seeing all this red ink on an inspection repair that's minor, but it looks big.
Yeah.
Who's going to talk them off the cliff?
I saw another, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but some stat that the number of deals that fall out with people not represented is significantly higher.
Well, it has to be, because it's the fear of the unknown. I mean, the reason you go hire a professional is because you could sit there all day, all night wondering, is this normal? Is this not normal? I don't know, because I don't do these things. But when you can bounce it off somebody who says, I've closed 1,000 deals, we're going to order an inspection. Likely what's going to happen is the inspector's going to prove his worth by saying, hey, the GFI is not working. You're like, oh, I don't even know what a GFI is. Well, don't worry. It's normal. For $10, we can swap it out. Oh, okay. Not a problem. So I would agree with that.
Love it. Maria in Chicago, love Chicago. Go Cubs or Sox, I suppose. All in all, go Bears.
Do you see listing agents adding to the agent-to-agent remarks to provide the compensation agreement with the offer?
I don't think that can happen.
You're not allowed to do that.
Can't do that either?
Nope.
Okay.
But you can advertise on your own website, on your literature, on wherever else.
Yeah. Again, we go back to the definition that they created, which was basically, if it looks like an MLS or smells like an MLS, you cannot put commission on that thing. So whether Zillow looks like an MLS or doesn't, I'll let somebody else decide that. Whether I don't know what the other websites are, but if your website is pulling other listings other than yours, they're likely going to say that constitutes an multiple listing service because you're pulling multiple listings, and they're likely going to say those become violations.
Cool. Having buyers commit to working with us before we commit to working with them, I find those who educate themselves about the process make better decision. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So good.
So as a listing agent, when a buyer wants to show your home, your listing, do you have to then preview the agreement prior to them showing it?
So I think the question is, if you're a listing agent and the buyer has no agent whatsoever, they just randomly call the telephone number on the sign and they want to show up. I don't know that that's been definitively determined because I've heard both so far. I've heard one that says you can open the house for them, but you don't represent them. And then another one that says, well, you probably need to get them to sign some document. So I don't have the answer for that today.
I think if you're meeting them somewhere, absolutely do it. If it's just exchanged via email, maybe not as much.
But somebody's got to open the property for them.
Well, my understanding is let's use two scenarios. You're in an open house. Somebody comes in. They want to look at that. You're there representing the seller. You're not saying, well, you got to sign this agreement.
Correct.
Second, it would prove the same point if you are the listing agent and they're wanting to come in and see, and they're unrepresented. You can show, but to move forward beyond that, that's where, when I think you start having substantive conversations beyond the showing, that's when I think representation would start.
Yeah, because again, if a buyer shows up, unless they're used to doing this, they don't have their own contract.
Right.
So the buyer's likely going to call the listing agent and say, I like the house. I want to put in an offer. Here's my terms. You draft the contract and send it to me. Now, all of a sudden, you get into the unknowns, which isn't really covered in the little settlement agreement on exactly what the listing agent must do under those situations.
Again, it's a training issue, broker to agent.
Yeah.
And we're the government and we're here to help.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. You have a listing agreement. The listing agreement says I'm not paying a buyer, or I don't care, pay a buyer, don't. I'm only paying 5%, 4%. I don't know, some percent, 6, 10, whatever. But then somewhere along the line, the seller says, I'm not paying the buyer's agent for any reason. Once I have a listing agreement, that you're out of it. Thank you for playing. This is between me. I can pay whoever I want, whatever I want. Is that fair to say?
Yes. So that's why you have documents in writing and signed by both parties. So once they've signed a contract, then the contract is the contract. They can't unilaterally change the contract without both parties agreeing.
And this seems kind of weird, but it happens to us from time to time. And mostly it looks like this. All right, to get this deal done, I've got a $40,000 commission. I'm going to eat $5,000 just to get done. And the seller says, whoa, I don't want you to eat $5,000. That's the buyer's money, blah, blah, blah. They got to do it or else I'm not doing it. Like, easy. I wouldn't do it if I didn't want to or whatever. I don't care. I'm not going to do it. I don't want. You got to be very careful. It gets psychology involved is what happens. In the whole. It's the principle.
Yeah, that's principle. And you take that to Walmart. You can't buy groceries with that.
Right. But it happens.
Yeah, no doubt. So I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there will be that aspect of this is my cost to sell. Now let's get that out of the way. Now let's talk about what concession you're willing to make towards the compensation. And we negotiate that out. We discuss that out and arrive at that if the seller is willing to make a concession. But those are now two separate conversations. Here's what I charge. Here's what you're willing to concede.
And that should be done early in the process before you even have a buyer.
Yeah.
No, that's
before
in the
anything starts.
That's in the listing presentation. Correct.
All right. So here we are. We're into this 25 minutes almost. Let me do this. Go back to win the day. How are we going to win the day? Get these documents signed.
Read them first.
Signed, right? Do that first. Learn to love them. They're here to protect you. Learn to love them. Okay. Second, you can get really good at a lot of things. You may not cross over to be great, but you can get really good, better than most, if you create a good plan and you execute it consistently. So when you leave here today, think about what you want to be really good at And if you're really good, and maybe you have what it takes to be great, but you don't have to be great. You just have to be better than the other folks, generally speaking. Figure out what you want to be really good at, create a plan, and then execute that plan consistently for a year, and then prove me wrong. Write me a note. I did this, like you said, and it didn't work. I challenge you that. Okay? That's how you're going to win the day. Just do that. Anybody else have anything?
Good stuff.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's go to work. Thank you, Mark.
Later.
Okay, there we go.